Yes,
Hello everyone. I'm Roberto Doring, Deputy Head of Mission for Economic Affairs at the Embassy of Brazil in London. Thank you all for joining the seminar Green Investment in Rio de Janeiro, put together by the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain. I'd like to start by acknowledging the invaluable partnership established by the Embassy of Brazil in London and the Chamber of Commerce, now under the wide guidance of Vera Inês, in putting together events like this, in pushing ahead with our positive agenda with the United Kingdom in the area of trade, investment, and beyond. Let me also thank Gustavo Braga, head of the Tax Committee of the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain. It's very good to welcome the participants of this event from my home state of Rio de Janeiro, including, of course, the representatives of Shell. Energy transition, decarbonization, and green finance have been important parts of our work at the Embassy. Since 2018, we have been organizing annually an event about green finance, focusing on the green financial tools such as green bonds, ESG, and sustainability in the Brazilian financial sector. A coming installment is due in 1 or 2 months, and of course, we will keep you all posted. I have today this seminar, of course, will showcase important Brazilian initiatives, not only by the state of Rio de Janeiro, but also by the city of Rio de Janeiro. Let me say that Rio has become synonymous with sustainable development in more than one way. Suffice to remember, the concept of sustainable development was enshrined in international law in the Rio Conference in 1992. At the same time, of course, Rio de Janeiro has a long-standing tradition in the financial sector, so it's only too natural that we are here gathered to talk about green investment in Rio de Janeiro. I look forward to hearing from our speakers on the themes of the Bolsa Verde, the Rio de Janeiro's carbon credits market, and tax incentives. Without further ado, I give the floor to Vera Inês and wish you all a very productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberto. And I hope that you all can hear me. So thank you very much, Roberto. And it is a pleasure to have you here with us today. Many thanks to you and as always, to the Brazilian Embassy in London for the support to this webinar, as well as to all other activities of the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain that envisage the promotion of the bilateral trade relations between Brazil and the United Kingdom. A very good morning to all of you who join us today from Brazil, and good afternoon to you that are in the UK. Today, we gather here to hear from our distinguished speakers who are based in Brazil as well as in the UK on the current situation and plans being made in Rio de Janeiro as regards green energy. We will have the views from the government, both state and municipal, on the initiatives that are taking place to support a sustainable transition to green energy, especially as regards tax incentives to green investments, both at the municipal and state levels. Equally importantly, we will also hear on the advantage being granted to investors who choose Rio de Janeiro and on the state's green economy project, which includes the creation of an exchange for trading sustainable assets, which shall serve as a basis for transforming Rio into an international sustainability hub. So finally, we will also hear the private sector's view, always very important, on this topic. I have to say that this webinar today would not have been possible without the organization of the Tax Committee of the Brazilian Chamber and the hard work of its chair, Gustavo Braga, who is the founding partner at BBS, Braga, Bastos and Sá Advogados, who has gathered a team of governmental and private sector experts to talk to us, and the work of its vice chairman, Fábio Gaspar, who is Brazil Tax Director at Shell, who will be conducting our Q&A session today. So to both of you and to all of our speakers today, our sincere thanks for putting together this webinar and for sharing your knowledge with us. Finally, and as I always do, before I ask Gustavo to open our works today, I would like to say a few words on our housekeeping rules, which are the following. I would ask you please to keep your microphone muted and camera switched off during the webinar. There will be a Q&A session today, and questions can be asked via the Teams chat box. So please feel free to type and send your questions to our speakers during the whole webinar. Also, please note that this webinar is being recorded and that the recording of this session will be posted at the Chamber's website and social media platform in the next few days. So with that said, I thank you very much. And now I pass it over to Gustavo. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you very much for the kind words. It's a privilege, really, to have such a learned panel speaking today on such an important topic for the world and for Brazil and, of course, for Rio de Janeiro. As you all know, the ESG agenda is a fact, is a necessity. Sustainability is no longer a greenwash topic, rather is a essential focus of business. I believe everybody has seen the cover of Time magazine this week, pointing out that sustainability is business, and it is good business nowadays. So within, of course, the institutional purpose of the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain, which we at the Tax Committee aim at supporting. We're really, really happy that we could put together this learned group of panelists to share their views with us today on the subject of green investment in Rio. So we'll hear a bit of context, a bit of background, either from the state of Rio and the municipality of Rio, and also objectively, which are the measures being put into place to enable green investment be destined to Rio de Janeiro. Those who have a bit of practice with taxation in Brazil know that the Brazilian consumption taxes are scattered among different political entities. We have some sort of VAT at either state level and municipal level and also federal level. And it is crucial that some thought must be poured into how solving the problems of taxation that might otherwise render ineffective any initiatives towards green investments. So it's great to hear, and we will hear today, which are the initiatives concretely being put forward, aiming at solving those bottlenecks. And without further ado, I'll start by presenting our first panelist, as I will present the second one as well. First, I'm passing the floor to Professor Ricardo Almeida. Ricardo Almeida, speaking for the city of Rio. He has a master's degree in public law from the Rio de Janeiro State University, is a member of the Permanent Forum on Tax Law of the Rio de Janeiro State Magistrature's Academy, EMERGE. He's a postgraduate tax law professor at UERJ, Rio de Janeiro State University, also director at the Brazilian branch of the International Fiscal Association. He's a tax attorney of the city of Rio de Janeiro, legal advisor to ABRASC, the Brazilian Association of Capital Cities Finance Secretariats, and also being a lawyer and a tax practitioner. Ricardo, it's a pleasure to have you. The floor is yours.
So good morning to everyone in Brazil, and good afternoon to those in London and other time zones who are giving us the honor of attending this event and my presentation on the proposals of the Rio de Janeiro, the city of Rio de Janeiro, to foster at the local level this restructuring and development of a business environment of the so-called green economy and the ESG platform, with emphasis on the carbon credits market and other assets recently regulated in Brazil, in what we have called the Rio Sustainable Finance Hub, or in Portuguese, Hub de Finanças Sustentáveis do Rio. But before starting this brief presentation, I would like to congratulate the initiative and thank the interest and an invitation that I received from the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in the person of Mr. Gustavo Braga, and also the support of the Brazilian Embassy for this event, which was also entitled Green Investments in Rio de Janeiro, in the person of Minister Roberto Doring. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our proposals and the step that we are taking now to advance these proposals. So I will present some slides, quickly contextualizing the project, which began last year and had a first stage carried out by the working group that we initially, I'll try to put the slides now. So please tell me if you're seeing the slides, okay?
Yes, Roberto, fine.
Is it okay? Yeah. Okay. So, so last year we started this working group, initially called Green Stock Exchange of Rio. Yes, please, thank you. And the presentation of the results of this working group took place on last December 17th, in a big event held at the Museum of Tomorrow, Museu do Amanhã, this sustainability icon of Rio de Janeiro, which has Banco Santander Bank, and Shell as its main sponsors. This working group was transformed on that date into an executive committee by a decree issued by Mayor Eduardo Paes, and went on to implement the measures built with many hands with the private and public sectors, academia and third sector, and to some extent with the specialized media as well. And more recently, with some new advances in the executive implementation of the measures announced at the end of last year, we also had on April 27 the launch event of Rio Plus 30, the conference that will be held in October this year, 2022, and that will bring to Rio representatives of more than 1,000 cities from all over the world, and also companies, NGOs, representatives of the civil society, academia, and research centers, which will produce, among other things, a document that will be taken to the COP, to the COP27 in Egypt in the following month, November 2022. By the way, before we start the slides, I would like to underline the role and the attitude of Rio City Hall and this initiative and it's in this whole process. We started from a perspective of articulating the various interested segments with a humble posture to understand and coordinate efforts that other players could not achieve, either because they were worried about competing with each other or because there was a communication gap, communication deficit between the players from academia and the public sector. This is a new understanding of the whole of the public sector, and the result is being reaped from over 100 meetings and public hearings with the effective convergence and progressive integration of the various stakeholders in this business environment, which is beginning to project itself from the local and national level to the international level. So, well, we won't have much time, so I need to talk briefly about the context and then focus at the end on the promotion proposal, which is my topic. So we are being condensed this the whole information, the first, second, and third topics. So we'll start with, well, the legitimacy of Rio. Why Rio? So We list some important milestones, starting in 1861, when the coffee cycle had already abandoned the city's mountains in search of new inland plantation sites. The city lived under the threat of drinking water rationing, with the scarcity of springs in one of the city's central forests, the Tijuca forest. So began the first task force of replanting native trees, which returned much of what we have today of this, the third largest urban forest in the world. In 1984, we started replanting of more than 10 million native seedlings, especially in the Pedra Branca Massif, which hosts the largest urban forest in the world. There, the great villain was the exploitation of charcoal, which lasted in Brazil until the end of the 50s of last century. More than 800 archaeological sites had been found with the so-called cafundás, wood balloons which burned slowly to obtain charcoal. At this time, Brazil was exporting firewood and charcoal. All the replanting was done by joint effort, and the Pedra Branca forest preserves its springs and an important biodiversity. In the field of discussions, I do not need to mention to you, ladies and gentlemen, but all governmental panels on climate change had Rio Eco 92 as their main initial milestone. And after that, Rio held Rio Plus 20 in 2012, which resulted in an important document that resonated in the international work and the Paris Agreement 3 years later. And now it is preparing to hold Rio Plus 30, again with the Million Forum for Urban Food Policy. So in the most recent actions to reduce emissions, Rio has done its homework, highlighting the commitments to reduce emissions by 2050 and the implementation of a neutral district in CO2 emissions by 2030. The implementation of Solário Carioca in municipal landfills, the expansion of the VLT, light rail vehicle, and electric buses for BRT, bus rapid transit. It are also examples of nowadays efforts of the city of Rio de Janeiro. This next, why we choose the voluntary market. The voluntary market, I'll presenting to you the slides in Portuguese. I have also the slides in English, so I'll try to change to get the slides in English. Sorry. I think I have the slides in English. So, yes, now, okay. So, everybody's seeing this slide for about voluntary market?
Not yet, Ricardo. We have to share it with us.
Not yet. Sorry. Again. Okay.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that, but well, we do not have time to further explain the reasons why we focused our efforts on developing the voluntary market, but we can say that the market's timeliness and volume and potential were important drives, given the figures from several specialized consultancies, especially McKinsey. Another important drive was the perception that the regulated market will walk in the voluntary market's footsteps, especially by making the use of the business ecosystem it will pioneer. So it is within this perspectives that we conceived an organization which shall be organically structured by all interested players and that may respond to a future public call, adopting a 5-step Helix model. And as you can see on this slide, and that we will not have time to explore in this moment. For the development and anchoring of this business environment in Rio de Janeiro, we realize the need to develop a triple anchoring, also with these 3 pillars. So the 5-pass propeller model and the 3 pillars. So, which I will only mention here, but we are already well advanced in their implementation. So the first, the market pillar. The market pillar, based on some requirements, definition of a validation standard for carbon credits and green assets, which we call Rio Standard. The idea is to validate as a simple second layer the best certifications available in the market, in the international market. Second, developing a business and securities trade environment by attracting various platforms which will complement each other to the diversity of niches like carbon credits, CBIOs, green bonds, green CPR, recently regulated in Brazil, reverse logistics credits, and possibly in a second moment integrated into a single desk or a future stock exchange, the Rio Bolsa Verde. And at the end, and also as a third idea, proposal, to ensure correct tax incentives that achieve their goals of promoting the hub, especially the market of green assets, with emphasis on reducing the service tax that there is municipal in Brazil for all service providers in the chains of generation, certification, registration, and marketing of carbon credits in a first moment. We also have the academy pillar that is being very well advanced now. So we can advance here. The recently concluded cooperation agreement between Brazilian Securities Commission, OCDE, and Invest Rio, the municipal company for investments and assets management, installing in Rio the finance centers for sustainability, the branch of it, which will also bring together a hub of national universities and also the University of Columbia that has already a unit in Rio de Janeiro. So also communication pillar. In the communication pillar, we will soon have the announcement of the Great Climate Panel in the front of the Museum of Tomorrow, with information on climate change and quotations of green bonds and whose design will be carried out by public tender and whose contents should be powered by Bloomberg Green, that we have already a cooperation agreement also. So let's talk about the tax funding. We will now detail the tax incentive proposal sent by developed by the working group, and which is now in the implementation phase, with Mayor Eduardo Paes sending bill number 1153 on April 6th of this month to the Rio de Janeiro City Council, our local parliament. As you know, we have targets established in the formal and legal planning instruments of the municipality of Rio, and we estimate that these benefits will stimulate the green economy in the city, promoting its environmental vocation at a local, national, and international level. And specifically, it will help achieve the goals for 2030 and 2050, providing an 8.3% reduction in emissions by 2024. So this is an overview of what we are proposing: a tax service lowering, a tax funding, cash backing ISS, the tax, local tax for service providers, and we've been studying a green real estate tax. So the market simulation proposal, so this first measure containing the bill to take effect in this year of 2022, as soon as it's approved by the local parliament, is the reduction of the rate to 2% of ISS, of ESCS, local tax, which is the municipal tax on services, a kind of a municipal VAT. This is the minimal rate allowed by the Brazilian Constitution at the local level to avoid fiscal war and unfair competition between municipalities. But we are so putting in this lower rate of 2%. Also, the so-called neutral services tax, restitution of the service tax. So the second measure is the granting of a credit to offset the ESCS due by any service providing company which is established or will be established in the city of Rio de Janeiro for a total annual amount up to 60 million reais, around $5 million, for the group of taxpayers applying for this incentive. This credit will be granted to all companies which purchase carbon credits in the credit trading platforms whose transactions are carried out by their head office or branch established in Rio de Janeiro, and which will collect their taxes here. The individual deduction limit is equivalent to the minimum tax burden, as I told you, of 2% of the tax due for this period, monthly or annually. So here is also a summary of these proposals. So the tax rate limited to 2%, and this incentive of 60 billion per year to the carbon credits buyers.
Ricardo, I kindly invite you to conclude your presentation. We're running short of time.
Okay,
now.
So I'm finishing. Final last message about the project and the efforts of Rio de Janeiro City Hall. We want to do it cheaply, creating synergies and without large inputs of public resources. A project that is also concerned with the other two letters of the ESG acronym, mobilizing social responsibility of stakeholders, saving public resources, promoting new activities that will collect new and modest taxes. It also ensures transparency and responsiveness in all its actions. So I have to finish. I'd like to thank you again for being here today. And well, I'll be pleased to receive questions. I'll try to answer all of your questions at the end of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, and congratulations to you and to everyone else engaged in this fantastic initiative with the broadness of bringing together academics and markets on a grassroots, bottom-up initiative, which is rare to see the public authorities, governmental authorities, with that kind of proper view on how to implement the best practices towards a common social solution. And also to making this course in practice. I mean, some people have neutralized their carbon emissions through credits, and Rio shall neutralize ISS burden, cumulative burden in the supply chain via cashbacks. Congratulations to that fantastic initiative. Thank you. Now, without further ado, moving along, I invite now Mr. Rafael Lírio. He is the Director of Tax Incentives with the Rio de Janeiro Companhia de Desenvolvimento Industrial, CODIN, which is the state industrial development agency. Rafael has an MBA in tax law with the Fundação João Túlio Vargas, Rio de Janeiro, LLM in corporate law and capitals market from IBMEC, and also ongoing LLM in tax law from the Fundação Getúlio Vargas, São Paulo. Rafael has worked in a few renowned law firms in Rio de Janeiro, always in tax law, in public law, and now, as of July 2020, he's a director of tax incentives in CODIN, Rio de Janeiro. So please, Rafael, welcome, and we look forward to your words that you could share with us today about tax incentives available in the city, in the state of Rio de Janeiro to green investment.
Hi everyone, I hope everybody is listening to me well. Gustavo, thank you for the invitation, and thank you everyone to spend some time with us today talking about a green investment. I hope at the end we can find a way to improve these markets in Brazil, in Rio especially, but also in the world, because environment is something that's impacts everyone. Are you sharing the presentation? Just a second, please.
Ali do lado. Onde tem a setinha ali do lado. Aí.
Everybody can see?
Yes, Rafael, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning to the Brazilians present, and good evening to the British present, and I hope everybody's doing well. In behavior of the Secretary of Development, Cássio Coelho, and also the President of Codin, Júlio César, I would like to thank you for the invitation to bring some information and news about green investment in the states of Rio de Janeiro. My name is Rafael Lirio, and as a tax director at Codin, I will try to demonstrate investment opportunity in the states. Well, the Industrial Development Company of the state of Rio de Janeiro was created in 1967 and aims to develop an action to contribute to the expansion of business activity in Rio in partnership with other governments and business entities, universities, and technology centers. Codin has a mission is to promote to economic and the social development of the state and the municipality of the state of Rio de Janeiro in partnership and aligned with the public entities and business sector. Well, that's the main question we have now in these markets. What energy source will be used in the future? The government of Brazil, state of Rio, contributed 80 million to subsidize, the world experienced a great opportunity to change the energy matrix, moving from the petroleum methods to the other clean and sustainable ways. In this line of thought, the state of Rio de Janeiro brings together two interesting sources of investment. The first related to natural gas, resulting from the pre-salt oil, and the second, which still has the great exploration potential, is the solar energy. The state of Rio de Janeiro, together with Codin, had the knowledge for the projected development and advice investments in the energy, in the solar energy. Most of the natural gas extracted on the states of Rio de Janeiro is concentrated in 65%. The share is increasing from 58.8% in 2020 to 64% in 2021. The same period, the participation of the other states has decreased the same percent. Well, we have received numerous interesting parties and acquisition for real estate in Rio de Janeiro for development of wind farms. The potential of the investments in the area is clear, and also with possibility of real gains. Talking about solar energy, the government of Brazilian states of Rio will contribute with 80 million reais. That means $17.2 million to subsidize solar energy projects and boost investment in the sector. The research will be the key of the fund that being structured by AGRIO, that's our financial bank in Rio, in addition to benefit rural producers, school, hospital, private home, then can be used in the revitalization program for industrial economies at the government will launch shortly. Since 2012, solar power generation in Rio de Janeiro has attracted approximately 1.9 billion reais investment, generation more than 110,000 jobs. A good point about solar energy is the payback to the investment. Looking for the return on the investment related to solar energy, we have an excellent opportunity in Rio. We have the second fast rate of the return in all the states of Rio de Janeiro. Talking a little bit about taxes, the state of Rio de Janeiro has carefully observed the change in energy matrix and has sought the development of legal mechanisms, in particular tax incentive, so the investor and entrepreneur can obtain the best results when they can decide to invest. The legislation is still under construction, but we already have some laws that can be used by interested parties. I bring some example in the presentation that's laws is already valid here to use for investors who decide to looking for solar energy. Well, it was a great honor to be able to bring some information and opportunities for green investment in the states of Rio. We have worked hard to create a safe environment for green investments, seeking in partnership with the private sector to develop public policies to promote the sector. I try to respect the time and be shortly, but also I'm open to answer the questions can be made on the time opportunity. Thank you to everyone to listen to me.
Thank you very much, Rafael. Pretty straightforward and to the point. Your presentation is very clear, and yes, nice to know that there are indeed those incentives available for solar and other sustainable energy generation projects in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, so now if I may already, in benefit of time, move on. I'm passing the floor to my co-chair with the tax committee at the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain, Fabio Gaspar. Fabio, can you please moderate the second half of our presentation and then start the Q&A after that?
Sure, Gustavo, thank you. And well, thanks and congratulations to the previous speakers. I'll now introduce you to Daniela De Moro. I hope I'll say your name correctly, Daniela. Well, especially in a different language. But you know, I have in front of me, to be frank, Daniela's resume, which sounds like an impressive one. I'll probably be speaking more than 15 minutes if I am to truly address her qualities. But I'll summarize as Daniela is an experienced corporate lawyer. She's been partner in prestigious Brazilian law firms, but she also has had an extensive experience over the past 20 years working in executive roles in multinationals, having had positions as general counsel, public relations, chief compliance officer, chief sustainability officer, and other roles as well. So, well, congratulations, Daniela. And she is currently working for the state of Rio de Janeiro as special advisor of the state planning and management secretary. So I hope I was true to your resume, probably not as deep as I should, but with that, I'll hand over to you, Daniela.
Fabio, thank you very much for this sweet and kind introduction. Good morning for those who are in Brazil. Good afternoon for those who are in Europe. I'm very happy and very pleased to be here in the name of the state of Rio. It's a pleasure and an honor, and I would like to congratulate the initiative, knowing that this is a topic, especially for Rio de Janeiro, that needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed with the confidence and the deep presentation that all of my predecessors just made. The ones who have worked with sustainability for the last decades know that only one initiative will not make the plan a success. we need several initiatives, and I'm very happy to see Rio de Janeiro City Hall and my colleague in Codin all devoted to this new frontier, which is the green economy in the state of Rio. Fabio, I will kindly ask you to move to the next slide. Overall speaking, I will give you a broad, introduction of the projects we have been working on since July last year. Actually, our secretary Nelson Rocha had a dream from more than 10 years ago, and working again as a secretary of the state of Rio, he decided to make the dream come true. So he put together a team of experts with very different backgrounds, mostly all of them coming from the private sector, to unite this dream and to make the dream come true. So we are devoted to make a sustainable asset exchange market. I will go through our modeling, our planning, our strategy.
Excuse me, but you went on mute. Sorry to interrupt.
I didn't do anything. Back. It was by itself.
Yeah, that was probably a glitch, but I wanted to let you know.
We can hear you fine now.
Sorry. So I will just rephrase that we are dedicated to make a sustainable assets exchange market to be built in Rio, and having in the state of Rio, and having a team of different experts, mostly coming from the private sector, to build and to project and transform Rio de Janeiro into an international sustainability hub for sustainable assets exchange. What is different in this project is that the state will put its sustainable assets exchange into the platform to start building up the market. So please, next one, Fabio. Thank you. So I have a big presentation, but I will not go through it as we have only a few minutes to go. But I'm totally at your disposition in Q&A, or after all, to reach me out for further deep questions or things that will not be clear for this brief presentation. Please, next one. So what is the role here? And our main goal is, together with other initiatives, to create a favorable business environment for trading sustainable assets. So of course, the ESG agenda is on the agenda of the ones who know that the world has to change, and we need to keep our sustainable development goals of the ONU present in our work. And but we need to recover the financial markets in Rio de Janeiro, to give back to the state of Rio the protagonism he always had since '92. And with the city hall that has been working very hard, we have in the state of Rio 92 city halls to inspire and to put in our work together. So next slide, please. We have here, of course, all the goals and the SDGs we are working on. And we need to give Brazil, again, the chance to fulfill its potential and to provide solutions that are needed globally. The role of Brazil has been, since ever, a protagonist in the environment. For time to time, we have some difficult situations that we go through, but we are all committed again to regain this goal. In 2014, I was working with the Ministry of Environment, and I was present in the COP for the Paris Agreement. And the protagonism of Brazil in this agreement was absolutely enhanced at that time, and we are taking this protagonism again. Please, next one. Yes. So what is our strategy? We are actually creating a platform that will enable exchange markets and provide really an asset trading infrastructure to support high volume of sustainable assets operations. We are working with technology of blockchain, and the token is the token of a sustainable asset. We are first of all going to carbon assets, but we are also working with circular economy, and not only part of it, and the biodiversity with biogenic genetics assets. So it will be a more broad platform and exchange market than only carbon. But next one, please. But the first step will be with an access market in carbon. And the advantages actually will be, the platform will be based, as it will be based in blockchain and token technology. We will be bringing the advantage for successful business, for a successful business in exchange market, standardization, and security for settlement assurance and supervision. So not only the representativity of all this business will be secure as an exchange market should be, but it will be available for, in the first step, for people, and after all, and for business as well, and after all, for business as well, for more complex exchange stock assets sustainability market exchange. Next one, please. So our first phase was being at New York in the beginning of March this year, signing a protocol of intent, and GEAP, the Global Environment Asset Platform, is the partner who detends all the technology based and in blockchain from the University of California, and NASDAQ. NASDAQ Technology, we have been working very closely to NASDAQ Technology based in Sweden for the feasibility of this study. It will, we are in the middle and the current of the 90 days. It will end beginning of June, and we will have the presentation of the feasibility study to start the phase 2. That will be the implementation of an exchange platform for trading sustainable assets. As I said, next slide, please. As I said, the model of this platform will be starting with an access market with simple operations and for new investors, right? And we will lead it to a main market with more complex transactions for experienced investors, for business, for international investors as well. Because we are modeling this exchange market, this platform of sustainable assets exchange market, related to legal legislations that will embrace the international exchange market. So we will have the support of a clearing house, a custodian house, all these traditional, but in a simpler way of a stock exchange market, but having the assets exchange market. Next, please. So actually the platform will be fully managed by the private sector. Okay, so the role of the state here is really to promote, to facilitate, to embrace the goal and the priority of the project, and to break down some regulatory barriers. So we have been in close contact with the CVM, which is the security committee here in Brazil, and the central bank. We have been working with the awareness and promotion of the project. So we have been working with other states as well, directly for them to bring their assets into our platform. We have to make the commitment is that Rio de Janeiro state will make available our assets in the platform, and we are drawing some tax policies to actually attract, to fund, not only for business companies, but also for individual citizens, related to the ICMS. Of course, it's the state TVA related to the goods, the sale of goods in the state. And we are, of course, having private sectors, other federations and city halls. As I said, Rio de Janeiro is the example of the leading city hall, but we have 92 other city halls that we need to bring and to embrace. And we have in Brazil as well the ICMS, the green ICMS, the green TVA for the state, that we share with municipalities, with city halls, and part of our taxation policies is to increase these division related to new criteria for sustainable assets. If you can move to the next one, please. So, of course, we have several stakeholders, and more stakeholders will be enhanced and will join our partnership because this will grow up in the next months in a way that not only nationally, but internationally, this will attract a lot of investors, as we'll have a secure, transparent blockchain project and asset platform to deal with. Next, please. As I only have 2 more minutes, I will really say that we will gradually, phase by phase, start our implementation, starting by the access market, as I said, with the platform. We'll do some auctions as well with the state sustainable assets. We will create the asset exchange company as the Brazilian law we have since 2009. We will have a clearing house and a custodian house organized, and we will be entering in the main market. So the first phase in a timeline, the idea is that in the second part of this year, the access market will be functioning. So the first phase of the access market will be functioning. And as the business will start growing up, as we have already 7 states that are committed in Brazil to use and to come to our platform with their assets as well. And we have some private companies that have been in touch and we are signing some protocols of intent for them to participate in the platform to make the market to grow, actually. So the private sector will embrace it, and we want actually to make this a first step, and to let the society and the private sector to embrace and to make it a successful and sustainable project, as I may say. So next one, please. We have some expected results, of course, the economic dynamism, the revival of the financial sector in the state of Rio and in the city of Rio. Of course, new business opportunities will be integrated with the global sustainable supply chains, the feasibility of financing, the decarbonisation of our economy. As I said, everyone needs to do it. So we need many initiatives that will complement each other. And we really are expecting and sure that this will happen, that Brazil will retake the leading role in the sustainable development scenario. We are all very enthusiastic and much in love with this project, very keen on making it a successful one, with the help, with all here present, and of course with the floor that has been given is a very first important step for the success. So again, many thanks for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you very much for your speech together, well, yours together with Rafael's and Ricardo's, make me hopeful that Rio will take back that prominency in that space. I'll next invite Sarah Ostrovsky, my dear Shell colleague, who is currently the head of project and transitions in tax. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Sarah, and I think you'll be presenting your own slides, right?
I will, and hopefully they're popping up as you speak, Fabio.
They are, I can see them.
Brilliant. Please do let me know when we're running short of time. I think I could speak to this topic at great length, so give me a nod when you need to move to your Q&A. And first of all, thank you all very much for the opportunity to join you today. Quite an exciting topic, but I unfortunately have to start with a bit of a boring but necessary reminder on some terms and definitions and a cautionary note. So there it all is, the small print. I'm sure that they don't give this to me just when I do a presentation. This is the standard cautionary note. And essentially, as well as some explanatory terms, it says don't base any investment decisions or buy shares based purely off what I'm going to say today. So there we go, boring bit done. Let's get on to the more interesting bit. First of all, we've heard a lot about some of the things that are ongoing that are seeking to tackle the challenge around the energy transition and global warming generally, but I thought it'd be useful to start with how are we doing? Back in 2016, the world met in Paris, and at that point in time, the UN was expecting that global temperatures, if we didn't take any action, would potentially rise up to 4 degrees Celsius. And since then, countries have committed to limiting that temperature rise to 1.5 degrees and have been working on their plans on how they're going to reach that in the meantime. Interestingly, we've obviously had the pandemic fairly recently, and we're starting to get the data in that looks at the impact on CO2 emissions for that. And at that point in time, it really felt like many parts of the world paused, and so it's interesting to see how much of a reduction came through from that. And you can see 5.4% fossil CO2 reduction for 2020. Maybe not as much as we might expect, given the impact of the pandemic. And also, it's perhaps too simplistic to say that's the end of the story, because of course there is a compounding effect that happens for CO2 in the atmosphere. But I think it tells us that the challenge is great. And since Paris, countries have been working on their nationally determined contributions, their plans for their limiting of emissions. And 151 countries committed to new plans as part of the work towards COP26 in November last year. The UN now estimates that even with all of these good commitments made, we would expect temperature rises to be around about 2.5 degrees. So we've come a long way from 4 degrees to 2.5, but there is still a long way to go to 1.5. Later this year, as you know, we're going to meet again at COP27 with all the countries bringing their revised plans and ambitions. And we hope to see that there'll be additional steps taken there to reduce the temperature rises further. But what does this tell us? I mean, it tells us, particularly in the area of tax and tax policy, that I think we're going to see an increasing amount of change for tax policy as countries, states, cities seek to try and make these plans real in their own locality and to reduce or bridge this gap. So that's temperature rises. What does that mean in terms of global greenhouse gas emissions? So you can see on this chart here, again, all data from the United Nations. You can see since 1970 all the way through to 2020, over a period of 50 years or so, the global greenhouse gas emissions have almost doubled. And right at the tail end of that graph, you can see a slight dip, and that represents the impact of the pandemic so far. So steadily rising, let's have a look to see what it means in terms of meeting those reduced emissions. So side by side, you can see the steepness of the curve that is needed to meet these new commitments that have been made. The different shading is many different pathways to reach those ambitions, some more ambitious than others. The most ambitious of these looks to reduce emissions by 50% within the next 8 years. So from 1970 to 2020, it doubled over a period of 50 years, and the most ambitious plans seek to halve it within just 8. It's a big challenge ahead of us. So how do we turn these commitments, ambitions, targets into real actions and real reductions? Well, let's have a look at what Shell is doing. So it's going to take all of us to make this scale of change possible. But Shell is also making changes. We have a target to be a net zero emissions energy business by 2050. And it was also great to see that that was echoed somewhat in the ambitions for the Rio state and city as well. Nice words, perhaps, but what does it mean? Well, we're obviously transforming our business. So we will be providing more low carbon energy, and that's through electric vehicles, hydrogen, but also electricity and power generated through solar and wind. We're also working with our customers because they're making changes too, and including in sectors that are hard to decarbonize, like aviation or freight or heavy industry. And in October last year, we committed to setting an interim target to reduce our emissions by 50% by 2030. And that's compared to our 2016 emissions. So here you can see the 4 pillars that we think are important and part of our strategy to meet this plan. Businesses need to be profitable, to be sustainable. And I think that sustainability and profitability needs to go hand in hand to be truly successful. The world expects us to meet our targets on net zero emissions as well. And we need to continue to power lives and meet our customers' needs. We need to do all this whilst respecting nature. This is part of our approach and how we plan to tackle the challenge ahead of us. We believe our emissions peaked at around 2018. So that's around 1.7 billion tonnes of CO2. And we've committed to being net zero by 2050. Now that net zero includes scope 3 emissions. And just a quick note on the scopes and what they mean. Scope 1 are the emissions that we make when we're exploring, producing oil and gas, chemicals, our day-to-day business. Scope 2, that's the energy that we're using or perhaps drawing from the national grids that we use in those processes. And scope 3 are the emissions that our customers make when using our products. So in totality, you see and represented in that square box, we see our scope 1s is the yellow box down below. Our scope 2, the energy we use to power our processes, in the grey box, and our scope 3 emissions forming the larger part of our total emissions. Now you can find out more about our strategy and the actions that we're taking from our website. I would encourage you to take a look at the document that you see on the left-hand side. It gives an update on how we're doing against our targets. And pleased to report that our emissions have already reduced by 18% for scope 1 and 2, and by 16% for all 3 scopes. Good progress, still a long way to go. So what's it going to take to get us there? I've put down here a few thoughts. It's not the whole story, but I hope it echoes a little bit with some of the challenges and solutions that you've been hearing about today. First of all, collaboration. Let's be clear, Shell can't do this entirely on our own. We will need extensive collaboration, I think, between governments, the private sector, and customers as well. I think we need to be better at understanding each other's problems, the challenges, and working together to find really creative solutions that target exactly, the areas that we're seeking to decarbonise. And I think the important work of fora, like the Tax Committee and the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, is going to be one of those really important areas where we can get together and exchange views. And governments will need to have a good understanding of businesses' strategies and their ambitions. And businesses are going to need to have a really good understanding of the local ambitions as well, and those industries that we're targeting to decarbonise. And bring not just capital, but creativity alongside that. So where else might change be needed, and what will it take? Clearly a lot of investment, and investment into infrastructure as well. So I would note that there's a lot of capital that's available to invest into renewables, and that's waiting ready to be tapped. I think companies like Shell are just looking at where that capital will be deployed. And we've talked a little bit today about some of the incentives that come through, which states, cities, governments and countries are looking to attract that investment. The size of the challenge ahead of us also means that carbon capture and storage, as well as nature-based solutions and offsets, will be needed to manage the transition as we go through the next few decades. So just a quick note then on some of the investments that are happening in Brazil at the moment for us now that will help to reduce emissions. The first one is actually a gas to power plant. And energy demands in Brazil are clearly going to increase, and we need to meet that demand, that growing demand. A managed transition doesn't mean immediately switching off the lights. We need to make sure that our renewable infrastructure is in place, but in the interim, gas is a lower carbon solution for that period in between, and will provide reliable and flexible provision of energy. And replaces perhaps slightly older and more carbon intensive national assets. So I think it's good to see some of these things coming in to continue to meet that demand. It's good to see that those investments are happening with ultra efficient turbines, really making those choices to reduce emissions. And I think energy efficiency is one of those areas which is perhaps a little bit untapped. And again, fiscal policy can really help to direct investment to make those upgrades and transitions that are needed. Let's have a quick look at renewable energies as well. So here we go. Our first solar park expected to start operation in 2025, and that's going to be supplying direct current to large energy consumers. So I think good to see that sort of initial start, but we expect, of course, CapEx globally within our renewables business to double and then triple over the next few years. And Brazil is considered one of our core countries as part of that renewables business. So look forward to hearing lots more exciting projects and things yet to come, a few you see here. A competitive renewable tax system, and you see the nice fancy power lines in operation there, really needs a full value chain analysis. And so to be truly effective, it isn't just about the CapEx and the investment. We need the infrastructure for the transmission, the distribution, and you need the market framework to be in place as well. I think there'll be a lot of collaboration coming up as Shell and others work together to provide really creative solutions from end to end. And yeah, look forward to seeing more about that too. Final notes, of course, there will be lots of examples where we use renewable energy certificates or, for example, carbon offsetting. And these are, I think, a good way to manage that transition, whether that's through increased forestry or other natural CO2 sinks. So in summary, I think the challenge is great, and I hope by showing you or reminding you all a little bit around the emissions and also showing you what that means from Shell's perspective gives you a flavour for the size of that challenge. I think governments at all levels are considering their options as well to create the case for change, to create the right environment for investment. So hugely welcome a lot of the things that we've heard earlier in this presentation. The pace of change is something that I think is still an open question. This challenge is enormous, so our vision and our ambition needs to be equally enormous. And I think when we get together and we really think about it in a creative, problem-solving way, I have hope for the future that we'll be able to make it. Fabio, that's all from me. I hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was amazing. Really appreciate it, and quite a nice addition to the points that were raised by our colleagues from the public sector, right? So I do hope we'll all calibrate towards that better future, and that will create opportunities. As we do that, we'll create opportunities for the state and city of Rio. So I'll be moderating the Q&A session. So, but I thought it would be just one second. I thought it could be just a nice addition to everything that Sarah was telling us about the future to show you. Just one second. Yeah, found myself again. So I thought it would be a nice addition to our expected future to tell you guys a little bit about our past as well. So Shell's been around for over 100 years, and throughout those decades, there was a lot of progress. And I like to think that Shell and Brazil share a history of prosperity. It has become increasingly more material. Brazil has been more and more material in the group's portfolio, especially in the upstream space, but also through our joint venture, Raízen in São Paulo. We are relevant players in the sugarcane ethanol as well. So that shows our commitment and our progress across the decades in Brazil. And Brazil right now is the world's 12th economy and the world's 7th largest oil producer around the world. So that's already a lot. But today we're here looking at a different perspective, right? One that will be looking what nature can provide and how we can harness it in a commercial level. So I think we heard some nice stories about how we can do that and how we can collaborate in that direction. Several regions in Brazil are moving in the direction of creating that commercial space to foster nature-based activities and renewable energy. It's great to see Rio de Janeiro, the city and the state, eager to fill that space with new opportunities. Shell is being based in Rio for over 100 years. And I was myself born and raised in Rio as well, even though I'm not as old. It may look different, but anyway, I'll be today moderating this Q&A session, aiming to complement the exciting ideas already shared by the previous speakers, and hopefully making this a more engaging and dynamic session as we go through the next few minutes. Thank you very much, and please submit your questions if you haven't done already.
Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Sarah and Daniela, for the second half of our panel. Yes, I invite all those attending to submit some questions using the chat of the Teams platform. But I'll take the privilege of starting with a question already, picking up and dovetailing nicely to one of the points made by Sarah, speaking for Shell, that actually convey a message I often hear from investors in general in my tax practice, in my law firm, Braga Bastos Advogados, where I usually asked to perform comparative analysis of tax burden, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. In fact, there's a competition, there's a dispute among jurisdictions on which one will ultimately receive the investments towards clean energy, towards the energy transition. And it's all not only country by country, but also in Brazil, state by state, there is such a competition. And so this question comes from one of my clients, and I advance that I will propose it to Rafael Lírio because it concerns ICMS. ICMS, as you know, is the state VAT-like tax falling on supplies of goods and a few services, but mainly goods and energy and power, of course. And there are some very peculiar features of ICMS taxation in Brazil. It does not go exactly like an European VAT. But also faces the problem of entering exemption when you have given relief in the middle of the supply chain. Sometimes the tax consequences might not go as well as intended. And also drawing from one point made by Sarah in her presentation from Shell, a proper tax approach must consider the supply chain as a whole, from capex to the sale of the power to the clients. And so, objectively speaking, Rafael Lírio, if you could please join us to answer this. I guess we not see your camera on, but so yes, there we go. Thank you. We're here. So the question, Rafael, is specifically concerning ICMS, due to the fact that clean energy generators must back up their power supply agreements. They must guarantee that they will be providing clean energy. And they also have to bear in mind that sometimes they'll need to shut down for maintenance or for some problems. And they have to have backup purchase of energy, to clean energy, to fulfill their obligations, supply obligations. However, according to Rio ICMS legislation nowadays, there's no relief in case a green power supplier has to buy green energy from other states, like from the Northeast or from Minas Gerais, you name it. This would trigger ICMS taxation on this purchase. So the objective question, and considering that he has more than 20 gigawatts of offshore wind energy projects waiting to be licensed already, is the state of Rio discussing some relief to the purchase of clean energy by green energy producers located in Rio when such purchase is required from other states, either by means of a deferral, which is an initiative inherent to the state. Of course, a deferral does not necessarily mean a tax relief, or by means of a convenio, of a covenant, which is the instrument that the Federation of Brazil, the states, require to enact tax relief of ICMS on a national basis.
Gustavo, can you listen?
Thank you. Now we can hear you. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the question, and I will try to answer as best as possible. As we told from the beginning, the green investment in Rio is an open market, and many things can be thought and also put together to get a better taxation on this area. Regarding to your question, our state revenue is the power to modify by law, of course, the ICMS legislation. So as a CODIN, what our main concern is to receive the investors in Rio, understand what they are trying to do, and also help them to other states secretaries to put that all together and bring the best environment for business in Rio. I clearly understand your question. Is a very hard question to answer by now, because we have to study everything is going on, and as I told you, green investment is a new market. We are building walls, we are building procedures, so we have to study very hard and also listen the players of the market.
Thank you, Rafael. And yes, let me congratulate, take the opportunity to congratulate CODIN and the Secretary of Development of the State of Rio on always being open to liaise with other bodies within the state administration, like the Treasury, like the Secretary of Taxation, also with the Environmental Agency of Rio. So yes, it's always nice to have CODIN opening those doors and listening the concerns of the investors and willing to liaise with those other bodies aiming at providing in the real law the most effective environment as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Gustavo and Rafael. We have one question, and I don't think you can see the chat, Gustavo, so I'll go ahead and read this one. We have a question from the audience.
Please do.
And that is also a question for CODIN. Brazilian producers are reinjecting around 60 million cubic meters a day of natural gas from pre-salt. Most is produced in Rio de Janeiro. In order to allow for the utilization of part of this huge volume, it would be essential, I guess, to develop policies attracting gas-intensive industries to Rio de Janeiro. Will you consider tax and other incentives to attract such industries? Yeah, so I guess the question is thinking broader than just energy production, but also energy consumption throughout the pipeline and throughout the chain. Thank you for the question, whoever posed it.
Fabio, thank you for the question too. And I think both. I think the state of Rio de Janeiro is looking for the project and also to create the taxation incentives to improve these markets. As I told you, pre-salt as a natural gas is a very powerful and clean way to provide energy to business and industry. So can be sure the state of Rio has many plans about projects and also tax and financial investments on this area.
Thank you, Rafael. I don't see any other questions from the chat box, but if anyone is interested in raising additional questions, please do so through our chat box or open up your mic. Feel free to just open up your mic and camera and we can make this a live conversation. A question coming in. Question for Rio de Janeiro State Secretary of Planning. Additionally to carbon credits, could you elaborate on what other assets are envisaged to be traded in Rio de Janeiro? Thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, we are working on some, especially in circular economy and clean energy as well. We are working on some assets, financial assets that we could preserve the natural capital. So especially in circular economy, we are creating a financial asset that could be a circular asset in order to protect the natural capital. So, for instance, how to remove, how to prevent to remove iron ore, or how to prevent to use more water. Or so we are working in the prolongation, a financial asset that could be traded to move into the recycling industry, to finance the recycling industry that needs to be to receive more money today. So we are working in circular economy, especially we are working into paper and plastic and tires. Okay, so those three examples. We are dipping into the circular economy related to the recycling and the value, the asset value that could be created related to this natural capital. And for clean energy, we are focusing as well on solar energy, but trying to engage in the second phase of our implementation. Facing on individuals and citizens that have also are also producers of solar energy and clean energy. They will also have sustainable assets to trade in the platform. I don't know if I gave some examples, but it's very short time to develop more than that.
Thank you very much, Daniela. I think Ricardo has his hands raised. Ricardo, would you like to complement?
I'd like to complement and say that we're struggling to work together with the state of Rio de Janeiro and to attract to the city platforms, stocks exchanges that are already dealing or trading sustainable assets. So we have already attracted last year Air Carbon from Singapore Stock Exchange that launched last month the first micro-mobility carbon credits based on the bikes that reduce emissions in the cities of Brazil. So it's the first case in Rio. We've been talking with many players, other players like BBCE, that is the authorized by the Brazilian Stock Exchange to trade Iraq that were mentioned by Sarah. So BBCE trade already in Brazil 320 billions of contracts, energy contracts, and the main part of these contracts now are of renewable energy contracts. So we're trying to bring a branch of BBC to Rio, that because we think that they are complementary, that they can get together and develop its niches, and in a near future to have a united stock exchange in Rio trading. And we have news also from the national level that where they regulated this year the CPR, that is important for agro industry, and also this that Ms. Daniela de Moro told us, the circular economy. It's a certificate of recycling garbage, municipal solid waste. That is also important. So we have many options. We have many traders. It's a very fragmented economy by now. We are trying to put together and make Rio this space, this environment, bringing also the communication pillar, the academic pillar, to make it, to foster this green economy. That's it.
Thank you, Ricardo. Very nice addition. We have one more question, and we do have a couple of minutes more. So this one is directed to Shell. So I'm looking at Sarah right now. It's quite specific to Brazil. I'll avoid being specific to Brazil, but I think it's a good opportunity for Sarah to speak about our NBS, or nature-based solutions business, on this.
Yeah, and I think it's a great question, and one that often comes up. So, you know, my take on this is that there is definitely a place to be had for the carbon offsets, and you can do that in many different ways. Forestry is just sort of one particular example of that. The good thing about it, of course, is you end up with an asset for the world generally. Obviously, those forests do take time to grow, and there is a huge you know, requirements to actually provide some assurance around those certificates. Are people really getting what they expect to get when they get those carbon offsets? Having said that, it is not going to be the only thing. We can't continue doing what we have been doing in the world generally and just think we'll get a certificate and that will be okay. It's got to be done in tandem with real tangible actions to reduce those greenhouse gases overall. So I think it has a role to play. It is a good one. It will help us to manage that transition, but it can't be the only solution.
Thanks, Sarah. We actually have an extra minute if we want to stick to the time and, you know, and honor the British.
Let's keep it British time-wise, Fabio. Also because I still have the closing remarks to make. And actually, these closing remarks are just a huge thank you. Thank you to Roberto Doring, Minister Counselor of the Brazilian Diplomatic Mission in the United Kingdom, for supporting this initiative and opening this event for us. Thank you, Vera Inês, the chair of the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, who had the initiative of creating the committees, such as the tax committee that started this year, January this year. We're really, truly honored, Vera and Roberto, to be able to support the objectives of both the Brazilian Chamber and the Embassy of Brazil on fostering UK-Brazil trade. Big thank you also to Fabio for helping me organize and moderate this event. Also to my colleagues with the tax committee of the Brazilian Chamber in Great Britain. A huge thank you for the panelists, Sarah, Daniela, Ricardo, Rafael, not only for the insights and information, very valuable that you shared with us today, but also for the beautiful work and effective actions being really put forward by the institutions and entities that you represent towards the greener future, and in that the transition, the energy transition in Rio is concrete, really becomes a reality. And thank you all attending, of course. Thank you for those who submitted questions. Thank you for those who kept with us for this hour and a half roughly. And look forward to having you all joining future events of the Tax Committee of the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce in Great Britain. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.